Hello dear students, I am Dr. Harpreet from Army Institute of Law Mohali. I will be discussing with you the topic of reservation leads to incompetency. Introducing the topic, reservation in India is a system of affirmative action that aims to provide representations and opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups in education, employment and politics and other spheres of life. The concept of reservation has its root in the colonial era, when some British administrators and Indian reformers tried to address the social and economic inequalities caused by the caste system and other forms of discrimination. Coming to the historical background of the topic, one of the earliest attempts to introduce reservation was made by William Hunter and George Full in 1882, who advocated for quotas for non-Brahmin and backward classes in education and government jobs. Later, in 1902, the Maharaja of Kolhapur Chhatrapati Shahu implemented 50% reservation for backward communities in his state. In 1918, the Mysore Raja Nalwadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar also created a committee to implement reservation for non-Brahmins in his state. The idea of reservation gained more prominence in the 1930s when the British government proposed the communal award, which granted separate electorates for various religious and caste groups, including the depressed classes later known as scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. This proposal was opposed by Mahatma Gandhi, who feared that it would divide the Hindu society and weaken the national movement. He went on a fast up to death to protest against the communal award and reached a compromise with B.R. Ambedkar, the leader of the repressed classes, to have a single Hindu electorate with reserved seats for the Dalits. The agreement, known as the Pune Pact, was incorporated in Government of India Act of 1935. After independence, the Constitution of India adopted the principle of reservation as a means of ensuring equality and social justice for the marginalized section of society. Article 15 and 16 of the Constitution prohibited discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth and empowered the state to make special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. The Constitution also provided for reservation of seats for the SC and ST in the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies, as well as reservation of the post in public services for these groups. Later, the Constitution was amended to extend the reservation of seats in the Parliament and to the state legislature for another 10 years in 1959, and this provision has been extended every 10 years since then. The scope and extent of reservation in India has been expanded and modified over the years based on the recommendations of various commissions and committees such as the Kaka-Kalekar Commission 1953, the Mandal Commission 1979, the Raghunath Mishra Commission 2004 and the Sachar Committee 2005. These commissions and committees have identified various criteria and indicators to measure the backwardness and deprivation of different groups and suggested various measures to improve their socio-economic and educational status. Some of the major changes in the reservation policy include the introduction of reservation for the other backward classes in 1990, the reservation for the economically weaker section of society in 2019 and the reservation for women in local bodies in 1993. The reservation system in India has been a subject of much debate and controversy as it involves complex issue of identity, equality, merit, representation and justice. While some argue that reservation is necessary to redress the historic injustice and to empower the oppressed group, others contend that reservation is unfair, device and detrimental to the quality and efficiency of the institutions. The reservation system has also faced several legal challenges and the judicial interventions which have shaped and refined its constitutional and statutory framework. The reservation system in India is thus a dynamic and evolving policy which reflects the aspirations and challenges of a diverse and democratic society. In India, reservation is to provide adequate representation and advancement to the socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes and the economically weaker sections in the public sector units, union and state civil services, union and state government departments and in all public and private educational institutions except in the religious or linguistic minority educational institution. Reservation in India is a government policy backed by the Constitution of India by means of various amendments and various legislations such as Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, the Central Educational Institution Reservation Admission Act 2006 and the Constitution 103rd Amendment Act of 2009. Coming to the constitutional provisions, the main constitutional provisions related to reservation in India are as follows. First is Article 15 Clause 4 which empowers the state to make a special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for SCs and STs. Article 15 Clause 5 which empowers the state to make special provisions for admission of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the SC and ST in any educational institution including private ones except the minority educational institutions. Article 15 Clause 6 which empowers the state to make special provisions for the advancement of any economically weaker section of citizens in matter of admission to educational institution including private ones except the minority educational institution to the extent of total 10% of the seats. Article 16 Clause 4 which empower the state to make provisions for the reservation of appointments or the post in favor of any backward class of citizens which is not adequately represented in the services under the state. Article 16 Clause 4 Subclause A which empowers the state to make provisions for the reservation in matter of promotion with consequential seniority to any class or classes of the post in the services under the state in favor of the SC and STs which are not adequately represented in the services under the state. Coming to Article 16 Clause 4 Subclause B which empowers the state to consider the unfilled vacancies of a year reserved for the SC and ST as a separate class of vacancies to be filled up in any succeeding year or years, and such class of vacancies are not to be considered together with the vacancies of the year in which they are being filled up for determining the ceiling of 50% reservation on total number of vacancies of that year. Further, Article 16 Clause 6 which empowers the state to make provisions for the reservation of up to 10% of the post in favor of any economically weaker section of citizens other than the classes mentioned in Clause 4 in addition to the existing reservation and subject to a maximum of 10% of the post in each category. Article 330, which provides for reservation of seats for the SCs and ST in the House of the People, that is Lok Sabha. Article 332, which provides for reservation of seats for the SC and ST in the legislative assemblies of the state. Article 334, which provides for reservation of seats and special representations for SC and STs and the Anglo-Indian community by nomination in the House of the People and legislative assemblies of the state, and it specifies the period of such reservation, which has been extended from time to time. Next, coming to the judicial interpretation. The Honorable Supreme Court has laid down the proposition with regard to reservation in India in the following cases. First case is State of Madras versus Champam Duraijan, 1951 Supreme Court case, pages 525. This case challenged the validity of a government order that fixed the proportion of students to be admitted to medical and engineering colleges on the basis of caste, community, race and religion. The Supreme Court held that the order violated Article 15 Clause 1 of the Constitution, which prohibits discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth, and struck down the order. This case led to the first amendment of the Constitution in 1951, which inserted Clause 4 in Article 15 to enable the state to make special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the SCs and STs. Second leading judgment is M.R. Balaji versus State of Mysore, 1963 Supreme Court cases, page 439. This case challenged the validity of a government order that reserved 68% of the seats in medical and engineering colleges for the backward classes, SC and ST. The Supreme Court held that the order violated Article 15 Clause 4 of the Constitution, which empowers the state to make special provisions for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or for the SC and ST and not for the reservation of seats. The Supreme Court also held that the reservation should not exceed 50% of the total seat and the determination of backwardness should be based on social and educational criteria and not on the caste only. Third case is Indrasani versus Union of India. This case is of year 1992, Supreme Court judgments 217. This case challenged the validity of the recommendation of the Mandal Commission, which classified 27% of the population as socially and educationally backward classes and suggested reservation of 27% of the jobs in the central government services for them. The Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of the reservation of 27% of the jobs for the backward classes, but subject to the exclusion of the creamy layer from the backward classes. The Supreme Court also held that reservation should not exceed 50% of the total post and the reservation is not applicable to the promotions. Now, I will be discussing some recent instances of demand of reservation. In September 2022, the Jharkhand government approved a bill to increase reservation for OBCs, SCs and STs, taking the total reservation in the state to 77%. This was challenged by a public interest litigation in the Jharkhand High Court, which stayed the implementation of the bill and issued a notice to the state government. Similarly, in November 2022, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of the 103rd Amendment, which provided for 10% reservation for economically weaker sections from the unreserved classes in education and employment. The court also held that the 50% cap on reservation is not inviolable and that affirmative action on economic basis may go a long way in eradicating caste-based reservation. In December 2022, the Gujarat High Court struck down the state government's notification that granted 10% reservation for the EWS in addition to the existing 49% reservation for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBCs. The court held that the notification violated the 50% ceiling on reservation and the principle of equality. In January 2023, the Maharashtra government announced that it would restore that 12% reservation for the Maratha community in education and 13% in jobs, which was quashed by the Supreme Court in May 2022. The state government said that it would enact a new law to provide reservation for the Maratha under EWS category. In February 2023, the Haryana government passed a bill to provide 75% reservation for the local candidate in private sector job that pay less than Rs 50,000 per month. The bill also reserved 10% of the jobs for EWS candidate. The bill was opposed by the industrial body and opposition party who termed it as unconstitutional and impractical. Now, coming to a clairvoyant view. Reservation emanates from the rooted presumption that government jobs and posts are privileged posts and are honorable. The second underlying presumption in grant of reservation is that providing a position of the responsibility with a lesser qualifying criteria will raise the level of such people. And the third presumption is that in the government department, even if people come with a bit less qualification, still working will not be affected. Fourthly, the basic purpose of rooting out the concept of casteism from the society instead gets more affixed for a very division, and a sense of discrimination gets more prevalent in the society instead. To understand the truthful aspect which can actually help the people for upliftment are threefold. First, the aspect of efficiency should be ensured in the government departments, and reservations should not be provided at all to anyone, for it cripples one's potential and make one feel that they are incapable to compete with the general category people. Second, for actual upliftment, the inner upliftment and raising the intellect, self-confidence, self-respect and consciousness of the people is of utmost importance. The reservation act as another barrier instead. Third, each individual, regardless of their caste, gender, physique, etc., is absolutely equally capable of achieving great height, clearing any exams and reaching to their zenith, for each one is God's child. Each one has the potential to realize the ultimate truth and be one with the Almighty and act thereafter. Many great people like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Savitri Phule, Jyotirao Phule proved their potential and worth by action and not by mere words or harping about rights. They reached the highest position because of their capability, and that's why they are even respected so much worldwide today. They never succumbed to their circumstances and proved their real aspect by their action. Similarly, the real upliftment will take place only when all the people are able to compete with one another in an equal examination. What should be actually provided by the state is the resources, the guidance and means via which all the students are able to unleash their best potential and work to the fullest by actually studying, understanding and by being strong. Then will the light of the new day be visible to all and sundry. When one will be able to compete with another with full spirit and potential, then they will be able to unleash and reach their highest potential, for all children are equal in the eyes of God. Reservation was introduced only for 10 years after independence to provide a boost to such people who had been left behind due to various circumstances. But it was never to cripple or make such a mindset for the people that they believe that they need reservation to be able to be successful. All that they need is to work hard and break through their limitation both physically and mentally. However, some other scholars like Abhijit Banerjee, professor at the Massachusetts Institute Technology, Cambridge, and co-winner of 2019 Savage's Prize in Economic Science in memory of Alfred Nobel, said that there is no evidence that reservation for women and scheduled caste and tribe in politics lead to massive incompetence. The average constituency in India is too big as compared to electoral constituencies abroad. This impacts election as voters hardly get information about their elected representative, and whatever little the elected leader do satisfy only a small portion of the electorate. Concluding the topic, I want to say reservation is a necessary and beneficial policy that leads to competency by empowering the backward classes and enhancing the diversity and inclusion of the society. Reservation is a constitutional and a legal right of the backward classes who are entitled to a fair share of the opportunities and resources in the country and who have contributed to the nation's development and diversity. Reservation is not a hindrance to merit and quality, but a way of enhancing them by bringing in diverse perspectives and experience and by fostering a culture of inclusion and cooperation. There is no evidence that reservation leads to massive incompetence, as shown by the studies and example of the successful and independent women and the SC and ST legislator and the leaders. The reservation is a harmful and detrimental policy that leads to incompetency by compromising the merit and quality and creating divisions and conflicts in the society. Reservation may lower the standards of the merit and quality in various sectors such as education, employment and politics by giving preference to candidate based on their caste, community or economic status rather than their ability, skill or performance. Reservation may create a sense of entitlement and dependency among the beneficiaries who may not strive to improve themselves or compete with others and may become complacent and inefficient. Reservation may foster resentment and discrimination among the non-beneficiaries who may feel deprived and disadvantaged and by the system and may lose motivation and confidence in their own capabilities. Reservation may perpetuate the caste system and its inequalities by reinforcing the identity and stigma of backward classes and by creating division and conflict among different groups in society. Moreover, reservation is a mixed and complex policy that has both positive and negative effects on the competency and that need to be revised and reformed to suit the changing needs and realities of the society. Reservation is a form of affirmative action that aims to provide adequate representation and advancement to the historically oppressed and marginalized section of the society who have faced social and educational backwardness, discrimination and exclusion for centuries. However, reservation also has some drawbacks and limitations such as the lack of clear and consistent criteria for identifying the backward classes, the exclusion of the creamy layer from the reservation benefits, the violation of the 50% ceiling on the total reservation, the misuse and abuse of the reservation provisions by some individuals and groups, and the lack of monitoring and evaluation of the reservation outcome and impacts. Therefore, reservation need to be reviewed and updated periodically based on the empirical data and feedback from the stakeholders and to be supplemented by other measures such as improving the quality and accessibility of education, providing scholarships and incentives, creating awareness and sensitization, or implementing anti-discrimination laws and measures. I hope you have learnt from this lecture. Thank you and have a nice day.